Genes are the blueprints of our bodies and they contain instructions, and an organism's genome can be manipulated and changed to tailor to a specific need using modern biotechnology. Genetic modification, also known as GM, is widely used in many areas including agriculture, medicine, research and industries. Let's take a look at the milestones in GM technology.
Given that GM technology is growing,
Natural foods are predicted to become a thing of the past by 2020, the effects of GM technology will affect not just farmers or scientists, but everyone around the world as well, including you. Thus, it is pertinent to know the benefits and limitations of GM technology, which will be covered in a second.
Pertaining to food, GM technology, when applied to plant and animal food sources, improves the quality and quantity of food in 3 ways: increased nutrition, larger yields, and longer shelf life. For increased nutrition, GM technology enables the isolation and addition of genes that offer higher levels of antioxidants and vitamins into otherwise normal crops. An example is GM golden rice, a white rice crop modified by the insertion of a vitamin A gene from a daffodil plant. As the main food source for nearly half the world population, the consumption of rice, which lacks iron and vitamin A, can easily lead to vitamin A deficiency. GM golden rice helps alleviate vitamin A deficiencies causing blindness and eye diseases, especially in third world regions in Asia where rice is eaten almost exclusively. GM technology has also enabled farmers to generate crops of larger yields. By incorporating genetic material directly into the germplasm of crops, farmers have been able to increase both the number of plants with desirable characteristics and reduce crops lost due to insects or weeds by inducing herbicide tolerance and insect resistance. This has contributed to increased yields, especially in developing countries. An example, as of 2012 in Romania, yield increases with herbicide-tolerant soybeans have averaged 31%. GM technology has been used to increase the shelf life of certain foods. The blue strawberry, for instance, is a GM strawberry that lasts much longer than ordinary strawberries, as they produce antifreeze, a trait obtained from the Arctic flounder fish. These 3 advantages, increased nutritional intake, larger yields, and longer shelf life, play a colossal role in addressing the global food crisis. Increased nutrition is vital for malnourished kids who have limited access to food on a daily basis. Larger yields increase food supply to developing countries. Foods that last longer not only reduce financial burdens from food processing and expenditure, but also reduce the global food stock wastage, increasing assurance of long-term food supply worldwide. With the ever-increasing world population, third world hunger, and 1 child dying from starvation every 2 seconds, GM technology provides a viable solution to this global problem.
Does having increased nutritional value, larger yields and longer shelf life mean betterment of the standard of living of people? Not necessarily, there are other side effects too. Genetically modified food can lead to potential human safety concerns. In humans, the GM gene product could be allergenic to some people. The process of GM may also leave GM food with mutations, negative changes in nutritional value. Genes such as those that confer antibiotic resistance from genetically modified food can be taken up by bacteria in the human body. The potential negative impact of GM food is shown in many laboratory experiments. For example, rats that were fed the Clegene's Flavor Saver tomato, the first commercialized GM food, developed stomach lesions.
However, GM companies tend to dismiss statistically significant data on grounds of biological insignificance. Hence, GM food passes safety checks even though there may be potential risks.
Well, that's not the only advantage. GM technology is advantageous in terms of environmental benefits as well, one of which is the dramatic reduction of pesticide use. By inserting new genes into certain plants, GM technology has been used to produce crops resistant to pest, herbicide, and bacteria. The commonly known Bt corn has been genetically modified to produce Bt delta endotoxin, a protein that kills Lepidoptera larvae, in particular the European corn borer. Such genetically modified corn reduces the need for large amounts of insecticides, which can amount up to 5.1 billion pounds a year in the US alone. With the advent of Bt corns, pesticide usage has been reduced by a projected 2.5 million pounds a year in the US alone, nearly 50% of the original amount.
On top of the socio-economic drawbacks, GM technology also brings about some potential environmental safety concerns. On a small scale, GM tech can have unintended effects on an organism due to its imprecision and unpredictability. At transgene insertion sites, mutations such as removal and rearrangements of host DNA may occur. Superfluous DNA may be accidentally introduced. These mutations can affect functioning of the organism, leading to unpredictable and potentially harmful effects. Moreover, the alteration of one pleiotropic gene may sometimes lead to changes in multiple traits. Due to this complexity, it is hard to predict changes. For example, a gene that makes strawberries more resistant could make them bloom. What makes all of this worse is the genetic changes, whether intended or unintended, can be inheritable and affect the ecosystem at large. An example of genetically modified plants affecting others in the food chain is bee epidemics, which are caused by genetically modified plants which have neonicotinoids incorporated into them. Bee epidemics in turn set off a chain of events with plants having less fertilization. This affects the population of those plants and animals which depend on them. Thus, it is shown that GM can indeed cause irreversible environmental damage.
But then again, GM technology brings about economic benefits as well. GM technology has increased the incomes of farmers around the world. The use of insect-resistant, also known as IR technology used in cotton and corn crops, has long delivered an increase in farmers' income by reducing the number of crops lost to insects or weeds. Improved genetics has resulted in fewer resources needed to process and package GM products as well. Aqua Bounty is just one example. The company produces Aqua Advantage salmon that are engineered to overexpress a growth hormone gene, making them nearly 20% less expensive to produce. GM technology thus brings various economic benefits to the table.
Did you ever think about the fact that genetic engineering of crop seeds can lead to certain socio-economic drawbacks, as the high cost could potentially threaten the livelihood of poor farmers? The price of GM crops is many times that of the price of non-GM crops. This is due to the fact that the GM seed market is dominated by a few companies. This monopoly allows these companies to control the prices. Moreover, new GM crop seeds have to be bought every time a new harvest is grown. This is caused by biotech companies altering the genetic makeup of the seeds, which sometimes leads to them being unable to be produced.
Farmers are sometimes not informed about this and end up having to rely on companies for the next batch of seeds. However, farmers are still forced to buy GM seeds due to their competitors buying the seeds and having better crop quality. They hope that the crops will pay off. By borrowing money to buy GM seeds, they land into huge debts.
For some, the cost is murderously high, leading to some farmers committing suicide. The negative effects of GM not only affect farmers who purchase them, but also neighboring farmers. Gene pollution is caused by the pollen of variable genetically modified crops landing on organic crops of neighboring farmland, causing changes in genetic changes in the offsprings. The removal of the organic statuses of crops may lead to organic farmers earning less. This proves that GM can lead to reduction in the socio-economic well-being of different groups of farmers.
GM technology has brought about medical advancement via drug development and xenotransplantation. The genetic engineering of vaccines has enabled genes and proteins from various animals to be implanted into drugs, bringing with it the desirable qualities manifested in the host organism. It makes use of the way plants and animals combat viruses in their immune systems and applies that to human drugs. GM technology has the potential to provide edible plant vaccines that could be used to immunize individuals against a wide variety of infectious diseases, ranging from cholera to potentially AIDS. The US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, recently approved a vaccine known as Flublok, which contains recombinant DNA technology and an insect virus known as baculovirus that is purported to help facilitate the more rapid production of vaccines.
As of February this year, there are 2 other GM flu vaccines currently under development using genetic material grown in caterpillar cells.
The question is, to advance or not to advance? Will advancement in biomedical science come at the cost of bioethics? GM can pose bioethical issues. GM, although mostly used in plants, is being used on animals to generate progress in biomedical science. Xenotransplantation is enabled through GM. However, the implications of genetically modifying animals may cause pain to animals because GM usually does not work in the first attempt, requiring many trials, producing many animals which have defects. Moreover, progress in GM may ultimately lead to human genetic modification. There are many issues with this, such as whether humans should be playing God by altering the genetic makeup of species. GM may also violate the principle of justice. Not everyone can have access to biomedical products of GM or genetic modification itself due to uneven economic standing.
However, if we take a closer look, GM is not inherently bad, just that the current system is not good enough. More research is needed to improve GM technology. Checks and balances should be put in place to check the safety of GM-related products and research. The public can be educated more regarding GM technology. This would most likely reduce the negative effects of GM and add to the positive effects of GM technology.